Thank you. I think I'm giving you.
Yeah, I made you a copy over everyone. That's a good one. Little dangerous today.
Huh?
That one cord is a little dangerous today.
And it's like a simpler system.
One cord. If you wanted to move it, during the service, you can, but it's a little bit hard to rebalance.
That's what I was, like if she had to, if Mom had the question and answer time, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, we can turn it around closely at that point. I just don't want to lose track of the comments. Because sometimes they can, but yeah, we can work together on that. Yeah.
You can bring your bag inside with you. And then also the video usually.
Please take a moment to straighten your mats and cushions and then come stand together for chant of the refuges. Come around and stand on the carpet if you like, or folks who are at least in the front row, I will leave more space there. That's okay. Just watching for that cord. So bringing our hands palm to palm at heart center, a gesture we call Hap Chang of sincere heart. We will first take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the three jewels of Buddhism in Sino-Korean. out of respect for our lineage, which is a Korean one, and then a second time spoken in English. So even if you don't know the chant, just throw your voice in with the sound and we'll pick it up. Chi Shim Kwimyang Ne Shi Bang Sam Se Che Cham Sam Chu Fu He Che Um Ta Jun Chi Shima Kwimya Ne Shi Sam Se Che Cha He Sam Chu He Che He Da Jun Chi Shi Kwimya Ne Shi Ba Sam Se Che Cha He Sam Chu Ye Che Sam Ka And now in English, I go for refuge to the Buddha and resolve with all beings. I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment and realize the great way. I go for refuge to the Dharma and resolve with all beings. I will penetrate the teachings and uncover oceans of wisdom. I go for refuge to the Sangha and resolve with all beings. I will seek peace and happiness for the many and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded. Please return now to your places for another brief period of meditation. Just taking a moment to check in with our posture. You should be able to feel your seat bones on the cushion beneath you or in your chair. And it can help to come forward on the fists, straightening the back, bringing the arms overhead, palms facing, turning the palms out, and then straightening the shoulder blades down and back before bringing our hands, left fingers on top of right, thumbs lightly touching, bringing the left and right sides of the body into greater unity. Checking in with our spinal alignment, shoulders in line with hips, ears in line with shoulders, a slight tuck to the chin while lengthening through the crown of the head. An almost imperceptible lift to the breastbone. The belly is relaxed, and there is a natural curve at the base of the spine. Relaxing the jaw, lips closed, teeth slightly apart. The tip of the tongue at the front of the top teeth. Staring down the bridge of the nose at a 45-degree angle, the gaze is soft, the eyes are half closed. The outer eye is with your surroundings. The inner eye is with your concentration practice, which may be pure breath awareness, noticing where the breath is entering the body, where you can feel it in the low belly, or perhaps counting the out-breath, or another practice that you may have. Listening to the sound of the bell, please go to your concentration practice for a few more minutes of sitting together. Please join me in some simple stretching to end our meditation period. Warming the hands, checking in around the perimeter of the face around our mask before massaging the ridge of the skull. Giving the ear lobes a little bit of a tug. Just remembering to keep your breath awareness as we stretch and move the body. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Jagwa Kelly Davenport. I am a Dharma teacher here in Ann Arbor. And I am holding down the fort this Sunday morning while many of our other clergy are in Toronto at our sister temple there, celebrating a very special memorial service for our founding teacher, Venerable Samu Sunim, who died in early August. We don't have his picture up on the altar at the moment. It's probably in Toronto, but if you take a look as you leave. There is a portrait of him just outside the door on your left. So appreciate you all being here on this rainy fall day. Who's here for the first time? I think we had several new folks today. Hey? Welcome. Nice to see you. So what I wanted to talk about today is in sort of keeping with the theme that we've set for practice this year, and that is embodiment and embodied work. And so we've heard several Dharma talks already this fall and late summer from teachers telling stories of how our organization was founded, all the hard work that went into it. Ma'um recently told the story of how this particular building, which used to be a bicycle shop, was turned into a meditation hall in the, I believe, late 90s, early 2000s, predating my time. And one of the things that had to be done was, for example, digging a tunnel to reinforce the floor that you're all sitting on right now. So that was a bucket brigade that members of our Sangha participated in. And then the past couple of weeks, I've had the pleasure of teaching our Thursday night meditation course, our intro to meditation. Many of you have probably taken it or maybe heard about it. And in that class, we spend a lot of time practicing with our posture. We learn many different types of meditation postures. And one of the things that I like to point out is that we think of posture as something that we do with our body, but it's really also something that we do with our mind. And that is partly why we are emphasizing that so much in the meditation class. And even with meditation, we may think of that as something that happens in our mind. But if we look at it from the perspective of the mind being really distributed throughout the whole body, meditation is really something that happens with our whole body as well. And we have a really beautiful kind of encapsulation in our tradition that Samusunam created, a teaching about sort of the core kernels of what is meditation about. So he calls it the meditation formula. So it goes like this. Meditation is concentration. Concentration is oneness. Oneness is no self, no other. No self, no other is no birth, no death. No birth, no death is true suchness. And the qualities of true suchness are intimate, immediate, spontaneous, and obvious. And so in sort of keeping with that idea of true suchness, which I might, in my own words, describe as wisdom that arises in response to a situation from the sort of accumulated practice and skillfulness of our whole mind and body. So not like we have to stop and think about it, we just know what to do. But how do we learn that? Because a lot of the times we're getting in the way with our own thinking. We're thinking about everything all the time. And a lot of our life, I call it living from the neck up, is happening up here. And so I think really the spirit of embodied work and embodiment is so important, particularly for our culture, because we have really created so many ways of things being convenient, not cooking. Perhaps someone else does cleaning for us. Perhaps we have things delivered to our home. We don't even have to leave the house. And so if we are not maybe regularly single tasking on just basic daily activities of our daily lives and taking care of our daily lives in a really embodied way, we can miss out on what that experience of suchness is really like. So in honoring Samusunam's memory, who was a Korean monk, I want to tell some stories of his time, early life, studying in a Korean monastery. And I'm going to focus around one of my favorite daily activities of life, which is cooking. And so on that note, before I go on, does anybody know what this is? Okay, hold that thought. Does anybody else know? What do you think it is?
Kimchi.
Oh, good guess. There's
White kimchi. I like the red.
yeah, this is a beautiful, so the Korean word is ongi, or pot. This is a fermentation vessel in the traditional Korean style. There's nothing in it at the moment, but there will be. That I actually found an American artist I think he's in Montana, who studied in Korea with a Korean ongi master for several years in order to learn the traditional way of making these pots, which are this is a very tiny one. This is only 1 gallon. Most of the ones in Korea are the size of a person. And I had the opportunity to travel to Korea with some of our other clergy this past June for a special sort of pilgrimage visit, and then also our senior priest Haju Sunim was invited to speak there at a conference. And one of the temples that we passed by on our little tour bus after we had visited the Buddha Hall and some of the special artifacts there, the guide pointed out this huge field off to the right of the bus. And it was a field full of these pots, but this tall. And so if you see videos of people making them, they take these huge coils of clay, and then there's a big wooden paddle, and they kind of spiral them up, and then paddling them into position. So I'm going to talk also about kimchi, because that's an important part of Korean culture. Okay, so let me find what I wanted to read to you. Oh, and also, you may not know this, but there's a special season of putting up kimchi in Korea. So we're coming up on that time. Theirs will happen a little bit later in the year. So that season and that practice of putting up kimchi, usually in big family groups, so that you have enough to last you for the winter, is called kimjang. And so that will come up a little bit later from now, because this, as the weather turns cooler, the sugars in the cabbages get more concentrated, and so it's the best cabbages of the year. Okay. So we're going to hear about some kimchi stories, if I remember the passcode to this. Okay, but first, I want to share a little bit in Samo Sunim's own words from his early time in the monastery. So he was actually an orphan, and he discovered a Buddhist monastery by chance. And one of the stories that was told yesterday at his memorial was the experience of him being a young person living on the street and seeing this beautiful monastery and asking, what is that, and how could I live there? And it was explained to him that you could, but you need to become a monk. And in our tradition, we have this story, this sort of parable of imagine a blind turtle in the middle of an ocean. And out of all of the places that it could pop its head up to take a breath of air after being underwater for a long time, it pops its head up in the middle of a circle and a piece of floating wood. And it is said that that is the rarest occurrence, except for being born as a human and having the experience of discovering the Dharma in your lifetime. So the blind turtle finding the one piece of wood in the entire ocean to take a rest on, that is as rare as having the opportunity to discover Buddhism. And so that story was told yesterday in sort of recounting his early life, and which I will now share with you. So Samo Sunim was born in 1941 in Chinju, a town in the southeastern part of Korea. From an early age, he had a fear of death and dying. When he was 6 or 7, he used to be afraid to go to bed at night out of fear that he would die and not wake up if he slept. Therefore, he tried to stay up as late as possible. His father had been missing since he was 3, and his mother died when he was 10. The death of his mother served as a final blow to his attachment to worldly ties and became the single most important factor in his leaving home to pursue a homeless life. At the age of 12, he wandered about from place to place, begging and looking for temporary work. After 3.5 years of this, he inadvertently discovered a Buddhist temple. In 1958, he began his novice training at Namjongsa at the foot of a mountain in the district of Sangju in the North Gyeongsang province. In this remote mountain monastery where tradition showed a sign of slow decline, Sunum submitted to the rigorous novice training for 3 years. The day of a novice monk begins at 2:30 a.m. and ends at 10 p.m. And in the following pages, he recounts his training. The day in the monastery formally began at 3 a.m. when the duty monk, or young novice, played his moktak, which you heard this morning, breaking the early morning silence and reciting the Great Compassion Dharani. The day ended at 9 p.m. when the night bell sounded for lights out. We novice monks, however, had to get up half an hour earlier to prepare the Buddha Hall for morning devotions, and we had to stay up an hour later to study the beginner's manual and the handbook for monks. Each and every day was a full, long, and hard day. Because of the workload, we never had enough time for our study, so we recited aloud our assignments and committed them to memory while working in the kitchen or running errands. I felt tired and even dozed occasionally, but I never felt dull or grew tired of my training. We were living in a different world. Worldly thoughts and feelings seldom entered our minds. Our lives flowed according to nature's daily and monthly cycle, like when we went down to the mountain stream early every morning to wash ourselves. At night, we would retire and fall asleep listening to the sound of water. In spring and summer, we climbed mountains and gathered edible wild plants and herbs. We parboiled what the temple could not immediately consume and dried them in the shade for winter. In the fall, we picked persimmons, which we peeled and dried. We helped posalnim, which is the term for usually female devotees. So posal is a root word meaning a bodhisattva, an enlightened person who is in service. We helped them make kimchi and boil soybeans to make soybean malt for miso. Kimchi is pickled cabbage and radish, which provides much needed vitamin C during the cold winter. So then he goes on to talk a little bit about working in the kitchen. So he says, I was called a kyongju, which means master of offering, puja, or one who makes an offering. It is a name given to the temple cooks who cook rice and make an offering of the rice to Buddha before the community partakes of the meal. Although the name sounds lofty, it is a humble position usually occupied by novice monks working in the temple kitchens. It is well known that the work performed in Zen Buddhist kitchens is not only a devotion of a high order, but also a discipline of attention and mindfulness. We were told not to waste anything. In the Buddhist temples and monasteries, it is a general belief that while in training, one's life is sustained by alms and the generosity of donors. Therefore, if one wastes and treats lightly that which is donated to the temple, one only adds to the karmic burden, which one is trying to eliminate through spiritual cultivation. Zen monks are told it is difficult even to consume a glass of water without being enlightened. There is a strong sense of urgency in Zen training, and you cannot afford to become irresolute. And then he has a part that I'm looking for a little bit later. So although we were told not to waste anything, it was so easy to waste something. For instance, we washed and rinsed a lot of rice for every meal, hundreds of thousands of grains. If we were not careful, a few grains would easily run off through our fingers and end up down the drain. We were told that guardians would stand on guard, lamenting over the waste until the grains in the drain rotted away. We were very much alarmed and became extra careful. There's one more part. Although I progressively worked in 3 different areas of cooking, from rice kitchen to soup kitchen and finally to pantry, importance was always placed on the main kitchen of cooking rice. Rice being the staple food, cooking rice was identical with providing the daily meal and so was considered a major service to the community. We tried our best to improve the taste of the cooked rice. There are quite a few different ways of cooking rice, and owing to the rare opportunity given to us, we were mastering the art. Working in the temple kitchen went largely unrecognized. This is why novice training traditionally begins with working in the kitchen, where one can refine and transform oneself unknowingly into a bodhisattva. There is a saying in Korean monasteries, there is no one who cannot attain Buddhahood after 9 years of Kyongju service. Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit then about kind of the history of this particular practice of putting up vegetables and bring that back around to a really beautiful Korean concept, which I discovered when I was researching Korean monastic life and Korean cooking over the last couple of years, that I think will have some bearing on something maybe that you connect with in your daily life. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit of some sections from a presentation that I gave about kimchi for our training students. So we may be familiar with the Japanese term of tenzo. Have you heard that word before? Which literally means something like master of ceremonies. But that term is not used in the Korean monastery. The head of the kitchen is known as the wonju, or master of the campus, who oversees the kitchen and all of the ingredients. And then as you heard in Sunam's story, most of the kitchen staff is novice monks. And when we stayed at temples in Korea, that is still the tradition. So the novice monks actually wear brown garments, and the monks who have ordained for their full training wear gray. And of course, usually the garments have these long drapey sleeves. And so I noticed when we were watching the kitchen monks, they have these beautiful silver like bracelets kind of that help them keep their big sleeves pulled up, which I thought was very smart. In the monastery, meals are called kongyang, or offerings, which is a word you may recognize from a chant. So the chant that we do this morning is a short excerpt from a longer one, and the name of the chant is Yabel, homage to the three jewels. And so this is a chant done in Korean monasteries every day, and it is paying homage to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, as well as the whole lineage. So there's Bodhisattvas' names who appear in there, and then also this word offerings. And that term kongyang is used rather than the colloquial term bap, which literally translates in Korean to a meal or a meal of rice. So we heard the meals in the monastery are very simple: steamed rice, tea made from the leftover rice cooking water or barley, some type of simple vegetable or kimchi soup, often black beans flavored with soy, red pepper paste, and sometimes tofu. So I want to talk a little bit about kimchi. Who here has tasted kimchi? Many of you. The folks that we met on our trip were actually quite surprised to hear that Korean cooking and ingredients have become more trendy in the States. So I guess that's not surprising. So I would say it'd be difficult to overstate the importance of kimchi in both Korean cooking and sort of Korean culture in general. And in fact, kimchi and that practice I mentioned called kimjang, where traditionally big groups of people, usually women, would get together and harvest and prepare kimchi for the following year, has earned the designation of UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. There's actually a kimchi museum in Seoul, which we did not get a chance to visit, but looked really cool. And the Koreans even developed a special form of kimchi that does not have any live microbes in it, so that they could send it to the International Space Station when Korean astronauts were visiting. The practice of fermenting vegetables in order to preserve them dates at least to the Three Kingdoms period, so right before and after the Common Era. And I have this beautiful poem to share with you from a 13th century Korean writer named Yi Gyobu, who describes eating radish kimchi, which is moo kimchi. Pickled radish slices make a good summer side dish. Radish preserved in salt is a winter side dish from start to end. The roots in the earth grow plumper every day. Harvesting after the frost A slice cut by a knife tastes like a pear. So the practice of making kimchi, and kimchi can be, it's really more of a verb than a specific vegetable. You can kimchi many things, but the most common one that you may be familiar with is cabbage. So Korean word would be, I believe, beiju kimchi. Also radish, as you heard, is popular. So the word is mu, M-U, and then cucumber, or oi, O-I. So you've probably had some of those. And what this involves is essentially washing the vegetables and then soaking them in a salt brine to draw out moisture, and then rubbing them with red pepper flakes made into a paste, usually some type of fish product. There's these little dried fish that are used. And then after that, the kimchi essentially makes itself, because there are microbes, microbial life that live on the surface of both our hands and on the vegetables themselves. And so that starts a process called lactofermentation. So the tanginess that you experience from yogurt, beer, sourdough bread, that's the same thing that is turning these into naturally pickled or fermented vegetables, which is also, it turns out, a wonderful way of preserving the harvest, because those microbes can outcompete microbes that might cause mold or cause things to spoil. So how is this sort of such a necessary part of Korean culture? So the entire South Korean part of the peninsula is only about the size of Indiana. So it's pretty small. It's a very mountainous country. They don't have a lot of farmland. And so being able to grow and then preserve really staple crops like cabbage have been necessary for Koreans to survive many wars. The Korean Peninsula has been conquered many times by other countries and other cultures. And they have endured several famines throughout their history. And so there is sort of a pride in being able to have this one staple dish that's very reliable. And it's said that if you have kimchi and rice, you can eat very well in many different forms. Okay, so then I want to tell you a little bit more about this, this term that I learned. So in Korea, there is a special term used to describe the ineffable quality of homemade, often fermented food. Sonmat, S-O-N-M-A-T, sonmat, which translates literally as hand paste or mother's hand paste. And I discovered this wonderful Korean artist named Ji-won Woo, who explored the concept of sonmat in an art installation that featured photographs of the microbial cultures they were able to grow by taking a sample from the hand of multiple generations of Korean women. So Ji-won writes, contact of food with the hands of the cook is an essential part of Korean cuisine. The Korean word sonmat, meaning hand taste, relates to a compliment in response to excellent culinary abilities. If someone is a good cook, the compliment would express that that person possesses good hand taste. Significantly, the word also connotes associations to family history, particularly the wisdom of ancestors and gratitude toward nature. Sonmat is a mechanism for triggering special memories and a deep sense of belonging through the act of eating, as the knowledge of producing a particular sonmat is a quality passed down generationally. And so through this art project that she did, she discovered that even across 3 generations of women who lived in some cases in different countries or even on different continents, the hand microbiome, because she's also a scientist, that each possessed was very similar throughout the whole family. So these microbes that we can't see and that help make delicious food have this innate connection to our own physical form and our own microbiome. So there's one other little section I want to read to you from a really lovely book by an American Zen practitioner in the Japanese tradition. You may have heard of him, Edward S.B. Brown. If you've heard of the Tassajara bread book, which was a big kind of introduction to traditional bread baking in America in the 1970s, he wrote that. But he also has a wonderful book about cooking as a spiritual practice, and I want to read one more section to you out of that. But I guess I want to just touch on this concept of San Mat, because I want to bring it back around to sort of what is the teaching here from a spiritual context. Maybe you don't all need to go home and make your own kimchi or pickles, although you might want to. But I think that there is something about this concept that resonated with me because I see it expressed in people's spiritual lives as well, having been part of this community. One of the most beautiful things about being here for a long enough time, and I've been here only 10 years, which is not as long as many other people, is that you see, in a sense, the spiritual fermentation of the people who keep coming back. You see them become more and more themselves, more and more humble, and it's almost as happening imperceptibly. But you can recognize it in each person, and each person has their own unique flavor that they bring to their practice. The way that they stand, the way that they bow, the way that they sit, the way that they work in the kitchen or do vacuuming. So each person a little different. And we say, and I think this is another quote from Sunam, we're not trying to make cookie cutter Buddhists. So this beautiful recognition of each person's individual spirit as it is expressed through this spiritual cultivation that we're all doing here. And there's also something maybe a little bit mysterious about it, sort of like, how is this happening? And that, I think, comes back to the posture that I mentioned earlier. You will find that Zen has all of these different forms. And when you're new, it seems like, wow, there's so many rules and I don't know what they are. I don't really understand why we're doing all of this. I have to take my shoes off. I have to bow a certain way. Can't put my feet on the mat. I'm not supposed to wear a hat in the meditation hall. There's certain times that we can talk, certain times we're not supposed to talk. And it can all feel like a lot of rules. But the reason why those forms exist is because it is putting you in a new context to experience sort of a single-minded attention that maybe your daily life does not have that opportunity to invite you into that type of bit of discipline. But within that discipline, so much of that suchness comes out, the spontaneity, the playfulness, the intimacy of practicing with other people. So let me share with you then just the brief bit from Edward Brown's book. And then I'm interested in, I have a couple of questions about sort of where in your life do you see the opportunity to work with your hands, with your body? What is the unique taste that you think you are bringing to your life? So let me share a little bit. And I love the title of this chapter is You Are the Secret Ingredient. I remember watching people at Tassajara when I cooked there in '60. So Tassajara is an American monastery in California. And marveling at how often they did not know how to sweep the floor. A broom? What is that? I would guess it's only gotten worse. And how do you use your hands to wash dishes or cut vegetables? We're becoming all thumbs in more ways than texting. One tradition of spiritual practice seems to emphasize becoming well-versed in transcendence. You rise above, you become detached. You work to remain up there, not letting things bring you down. Often this goes along with the rejection of the material world. After all, you're above all that stuff. Relating with the material world sometimes becomes more and more impossible. After all, while you were up and out, things on the earth plane did not receive the attention they need to function smoothly. So when you do come down, difficulties or disorder may confront you, sometimes in your own body. On the other hand, Zen focuses on immanence. The spiritual is right here and now. The emphasis is on re-inhabiting your own body. You move back in. That is, you devote more of your awareness to receiving sensations from your body, and spend less time ignoring your body or giving your body directives from the head. Rather than being up and out, you find yourself here. As the poet Kabir puts it, enter into your own body. There you will find a solid place to put your feet. Think about it carefully. Don't go off somewhere else. Most commonly, moving back into our bodies necessitates undertaking some specifics. We sit, dig, work at a task, do a downward dog, bow, meditate, cook, cut, chop, clean. Though exercise can be exhilarating, we often overlook or override the information coming from the body and focus on performance. So to overcome or reverse a lifetime of habits and become more intimately acquainted with the body, that is, to become embodied, we usually need to be doing specific things, whether they are forms, practices, or activities. Cooking, gardening, yoga, theater, dance, meditation. You find yourself here manifesting, or I would say fermenting. Your movements, your very stance, is less oriented to posturing and becomes more aligned with your essence. We call that authenticity, sending your roots down into the ground and growing tall inside. So we have a few minutes for maybe some discussion or sharing what you heard or what you might take away. And a couple of questions is, where in your life do you notice the opportunity to do wholehearted work with the body? And what is the character or the flavor of that? What does it teach you? And we can pass the microphone around.
Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know if it counts as work, but I've been trying to not home, like to and from work. And one thing that I get to walk through West Park, I'm very fortunate in that way. And it's been very interesting watching, like more days than not, seeing how everything is changing and how like the ragweed is coming up and the ducks are leaving and the herons are fishing. It's really nice. So, thank you.
Am I too loud? Okay, good. So I work in a restaurant, and the key emphasis in that restaurant is speed. And before I started practicing, I would rush and try to get through everything, and it would stress me out, and it would stress everyone else out, and it would stress the customers out. It was no good for nobody. And then when I started practicing, at first, the idea of going slower and moving more mindfully seemed insane to me. Like, we don't have time to move mindfully, we have to get things done. But there just came a day when I was like, you know what, today's the day I'm going to do it. And I realized when I started putting things in bags with like great precision, or intentionally moving slower, or taking time to talk to people instead of rushing around, even when it would frustrate my bosses to a degree, I found that not only was I happier, the customers were happier, things were getting done correctly. My coworkers, like, it took them a while to adjust to me moving slower, but once they did, it was less stressful for them because I wasn't panicking. Just mindfully moving, it seems so small, and at times it seems like you don't have time for it, but it just like takes everything from up here to down here, and it just gives you time to do the things you need to do and be yourself, I guess.
I started tattooing a couple months ago, and going into it, I thought the service was just a tattoo. There are endless miraculous moments of service when I'm tattooing a person, from the way I move their arm out to change the angle, or the way I wipe the blood from their skin, to even bandaging it. Just so many opportunities to be gentle and mindful, because it requires every single moment of it to be really, really concentrated, focused. And
I'm her mom. I'm happy for her. Thank you.
So I guess for me, physical therapy. So like I had surgery on my back in April, and that caused nerve damage in my leg. And so I have to constantly think about my movements, and then sometimes finding that I'm able to move without using so much brain energy, because that also is like, I don't know, it adds to my worries about like where I'm stepping and how I'm stepping. And I've fallen a couple times, and those moments were really like alarming. And then I can just kind of come back to myself and think about like, okay, like I have to have the endurance to be able to keep going down that path, and just noticing my improvements throughout time. So yeah.
so what I was thinking about was, for me, I recently, in the past couple months, have taken up a lot of restorative yoga and yin yoga. I have an autoimmune disease and was just struggling with increased pain. And just for me, doing that was really an extension of my meditation practice, because you're holding the positions for like 2 to 5 minutes. So there's not like that quick flow like people associate with yoga. So really it's about kind of like finding the stretch and the edge of how far you can go for what is good for the body versus what is painful. And so it's also really a huge mental practice, like beyond the physical practice. So I feel like that's one part of my practice that I find very fulfilling.
I was just gonna say real quickly that I make kimchi and cabbage sauerkraut every year, or kraut as I say. But it's something can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. But the beauty of it is, and I think for some of us it scares us away. The beauty is whenever you want some sauerkraut, I use 5-gallon buckets. You just lift the weight off, the lid off, remove the weight. Here's where we don't seem to like it so much. Scrape the scum off that builds up.
Yeah.
Realizing that's not edible, and then just scooping out what you want, and then putting the weight back on. And it's a nice feeling to be able to say, this is something that I did from start to finish. I'm done.
Comments, contributions, questions? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to put those excerpts together and weaving it into such a good story and moral. I think I just really enjoyed the word like variation and how it describes it and sort of meaning behind it. I think it's sort of like, and I personally can apply it also to a lot of the things I do, and for instance, like Taekwondo, yoga, like working in the house. Like, it's just like I take the time to really ferment or to really like deepen the little things that I do. It's just like it really builds up that richness, that sort of meaning into like makes me realize like why I'm doing this and not just doing it for the sake of doing it. Thank you.
I get the last.
Oh, what's amazing about fermentation is the only thing you need are your hands, salt, I guess whatever you're fermenting, and then time. Time is the ingredient, right? You're the secret ingredient, and time too. So maybe instead of salt in this spiritual context, we'd say seasoning, seasoning and time. So thank you for going with the metaphor. And thank you for sharing all of your stories. And I'll leave you with just one other little nugget of wisdom that was shared yesterday at Sunam's memorial. One of the things that he used to tell people, and we still do this actually when you come to the meditation class, we show you how to put your shoes away. And you'll notice, of course, when you come in the door here, you take your shoes off. And then in the monastery, and also here, usually, we turn them so the toes are out. And so he would teach you how to do that. And we teach our meditation class students how to do that when you're putting your shoes away. And he would say, do small things carefully. So I invite you to take that into your life over the next week or until we see you again, to do small things carefully and see what the result is. So thank you for being here. Saloon, do you have announcements for us?
Yeah, I have a couple announcements. I was saving my own experience for this. I discovered downhill skiing last year, and I also realized what an embodied experience that is, because as soon as you go up in your head and start thinking about what you're doing, you're falling on the ground. So, and also I found that if you're trying to fall asleep at night and you want to get out of your head, just feel your arms and your legs. It just immediately puts you up. So yeah, Jagwa said I have some announcements. Most of the happenings around here during the week. We've got a family service in about 2 weeks, on the 9th, if you're interested in bringing your kids or have kids. We've got yoga classes on Tuesday evenings here at 6:30 with David Black. He's a wonderful teacher. We have something else coming up on Sundays called Practice Period, and that begins in about 3 weeks. If you're interested in learning about Buddhism, Plain and Simple is the name of the book. That's a really great way to get your feet wet and more like Buddhism. Let's see, we've got BIPOC, if you know the acronym, Indigenous Person of Color, meditations on Saturday at 3 here and online. Also on Saturdays at 3, we do a work practice period out in the garden. And I try to be there for that. It's wonderful, especially this time of year, lots of things going on out in the garden. Let's see, we've got a few other things too. We've got on Thursday mornings at 9:30, something called Way of the Bodhisattva. It's kind of a study group online. And also on Wednesdays at 6:30 online, we have something called the Song of Meditation study. Also here today, we have Recovery Dharma, and it's actually next door in the yellow building, which we call the temple. Ilja and Mike here will be there for sure, and maybe others.
Okay, explain that a little bit more.
Yeah.
The recovery group, I don't know what that is.
Okay, I call it the yellow house. That seems easier. People understand that one. Recovery Dharma is a Buddhist-inspired approach to recovering from an addiction. It doesn't matter. Most of us are familiar with AA or NA or something. Recovery Dharma is for any form of addiction. Actually, a lot of AA groups are too, but and we focus on the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. And we meet Sundays in a hybrid version here for 1 hour, starting at noon. And I'm pretty prompt about starting at noon. And then we also have a pure virtual one on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Did that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and also there are free tomatoes out there today for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for bringing those. We have some paper bags too, if you want to take several, please do. And we can hang out in the lobby here afterwards if you like, and have a few words with some new people here. I've never seen so many new people here on one day, so it's great to meet you.
So we'll go ahead and finish with the 4 great Bodhisattva vows. So bring your hands palm to palm. Please repeat after me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one.
I vow to liberate. Blind passion, one root. I vow to terminate. Dharma gate, one mind. I vow to penetrate. The great way of Buddha. I vow to realize. So before we stand and do 3 vows together in front of the altar and then process out, if we could have a couple of folks after, as people are leaving the hall this morning, the 2nd and 3rd rows of mats and cushions need to be neatly put away. Here's an opportunity to do small things with great care. And then the ones touching the carpet will stay for the afternoon service. So today we do have a 4 p.m. service. You're welcome to come back for that. It's the 1st and 3rd Sundays of the month. And then this service happens every Sunday at 10 a.m. So thank you.